Our next interview is with Shmulik Barak. Shmulik is a highly experienced security expert on various areas of security, facilities, aviation security, marine and seaports, border crossings, and public officials. He is experienced in security personnel training programs development and overall security program and risk management. His specialties include developing training programs for security personnel, planning and managing security activities, auditing security systems, and formulating concepts and procedures. He is the founder and CEO of SBS Consulting, Training, and Managing Solutions, a professional consulting services in various security areas including planning, risk analysis, supervision and auditing, personnel recruitment and training, developing and formulating procedures and training programs, debriefings, lectures, and more. He is a retired police officer in Israel. He has served as head of Jerusalem's Periphery Crossing Points Unit in Jerusalem District. He has also served as the head of Education and Academic Institutions Security Section and the head of Threatened Public Officials Protection Section. And today we're going to get the benefit of Shmulik's experience in securing public places and to get an idea of the experience he has in this. When he was the head of Jerusalem's Periphery Crossing Points Unit in Jerusalem District, he was the unit commander in charge of inspection operations and security operations at the crossing points to Jerusalem to prevent the insertion of terrorists and weapons into the city and the state of Israel. So he has a lot of experience in securing public places, and during this interview, we get the benefit of his knowledge. Enjoy the interview. Shmulik Barak, I want to thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us and share your knowledge and experience with us today on a topic that should be near and dear to everybody's heart, because terrorist activity that occurs in public places is the most predominant form of terrorist activity. That's the softest target, and those are the hardest to actually secure and protect. And you have great experience in this field of helping secure public places in Israel, and we're very happy to have you here sharing your thoughts and experience with us today. And please, take your time in explaining this, because this is a great topic, and people are going to want to take notes. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my ideas in this important subject. Hello and greetings to all our viewers. Today, as George mentioned before, I'm going to talk about a subject that concerns, I believe, every one of us, which is the security in public locations. Before I engage my session, I would like to share with you two short stories based on my own experience, which happened a few years ago. The first one goes back to September 2001, 9/11, which at that time I was on holiday in Spain, in Madrid to be exact, when this horrific incident took place. And then I continued my journey in Spain for a week or 8 days more, ended up in Malaga, in the south of Spain, and took off by plane in Alitalia via Milan back to Tel Aviv. After we took off from Malaga toward Milan, I could not miss the fact that the door cockpit between the fuselage and the cockpit was open, and the door even slammed and banged against the wall because the plane was quite shaky after takeoff. And even after the horrific incident that took place in New York, which, as you know, terrorists got seized the airplane by entering the cockpit, which was open, and threatened the pilot by putting knives on their throats and collide into the Twin Towers. And a week later, as if nothing happened, things go on as it was before. This is one, because I then realized that Europe, for that matter, did not realize and grasp the change that had happened after this horrific incident. Story number two goes back to a place which I wasn't there at the time. and it referred to the Boston Marathon in April 2013, in which two explosive devices exploded in very small narrow of time between one another at the finish line of the marathon. Now, few video footages that have been released afterwards, at least one of them showed that one of the EDs, one of the explosive devices, were put near and close proximity to a US Post mailbox, which was surrounded by a lot of people. And nobody, forgive me for the obscenity, gave a shit. Okay? Nobody took notice of that unattended bag, which later on explode and cause a lot of casualties. In Israel, for instance, this incident could not happen. But unfortunately, the reality that we are living in for the last decades made the public very aware for any suspicious indicator to a security event that might happen. Anytime that an unattended object will be in the streets or any other public location, within few minutes, somebody will ask, hey, whose bag is it? And within few seconds, if there is no answer, immediately the police force and security forces are called on. And I believe this is one of the gaps that in Europe and even also in the States, in the United States, the public is not yet prepared for it. Now I want to go on to enter to my discussion and start to analyze the situation and the problems and to offer several solutions on the principal level. I believe that the recent terrorist attacks in Paris last November and Mali also last November and the state of Israel over the past year, raising the issue of public security in various locations. If we know the number of casualties in the above events, let's take the note of 132 casualties in Paris, 19 in Mali, 27 as of now, regretfully, in Israel, and hundreds of wounded people in all those countries, I think we have to realize that we are facing a real challenge. Needless to say, of course, that incidents of this kind occur frequently in Africa by these terrorist organizations and their proteges, such as Boko Haram. Now, let's try to define or to understand what is the meaning of the phrase public locations. I suggest the following definition: a site or structure that the public have access to it, whether paid or free entrance. Then, I think we have to classify all these kind of places into two major groups: outdoor locations and indoor locations. In the outdoor classification, we can mention, for instance, parks, gardens, and nature reserves, city streets and other public spaces, public parking lots, public transport, especially vehicles and routes, popular sporting events like the Boston Marathon, for instance, okay, and national heritage sites. In the indoor location, for instance, shopping malls and commercial center, stadiums, entertainment venues such as bars, nightclubs, discotheques, restaurants, etc., museums, central transport stations, trains, buses, and even passengers terminal in seaports or airports. And of course, office buildings with an emphasis on high-rise buildings. Now let's take a review about the threats that exist on such kind of local public locations. May I note before that some of these threats may occur in criminal context as well, not only terrorists. We can begin with active shooter or shooters, stabbing, a suicide bomber, a car bomb, running over by a car, explosive devices, hostages situation, sabotage in transport infrastructure such as railway tracks, bridges, power lines, etc., intentional collision with public transport vehicles, arson, and acts of violence and public disturbances. Now, all these kind of threats have two major kinds of effect on the public. One is the physical effects group, and the other is the psychological effects group. In the physical effects, we can mention the casualties and injuries, of course, the collapse of buildings, damage to property, and, if needed, evacuation of population, which is a very hard task to fulfill. In the psychological effect, we can mention the disruption of normal life, a sense of anxiety and uncertainty, loss of confidence in the government agencies and institutions, demoralization, loss of sense of personal security, and pressure on decision makers to act and to act quickly. Having reviewed all those kind of threats, let's try to establish the principles of the required response. I believe that first of all, the state have to assume overall responsibility on this matter, not only by its security agencies, but by leading, guiding, regulating, and instructing the community and civil security units of various organizations. But for that, a comprehensive program and budget is required. Civil security areas of certain kinds has to operate under professional guidance of a security agency, usually the police, which its guidelines are binding by law. Civil security personnel should be given legal powers to carry out their duties. And we have to realize that it is inevitable to change in a certain way the civilian and or tourism and or commercial appearance of certain venues in order to install security measures. It is the lesser evil. There is a need also to improve the coordination and cooperation between civil security areas and organizations and state security forces. Every organization must formulate a detailed plan of action for various emergency scenarios and business continuation plan, coordinated with the local police or security force, and assimilated among the employees. I may say that such a model of civil security is working for at least 4 decades in Israel and with quite success. Now I want to talk about what I believe most likely is the main component that can ensure success in our topic, and it is the integration of public activity against terrorism. First of all, let me say that I think that leadership, whether of the public or in any organization, should not demonstrate to the public, citizens or employees, that there is nothing to do. There is always something to do. Bear in mind that proactivity eliminates anxiety. Security agencies cannot cover every inch on the ground, so public awareness minimizes response time and will assist greatly to the security forces in any incident. And this, I believe, in 2 major ways. First of all, I believe there is a need to allow carrying of personal weapons to citizens. And the second one is we have to implement a national indoctrination program to increase security awareness, including identification of suspicious indicators of a possible security incident in progress. This kind of plan, of program, will not results in few days. It is a matter of months and even years, but we have to start someday. In order to conclude for the meantime what I've just said, let me say that I believe that we are at war against international terrorism. I identify two major gaps. First is the need to improve public awareness. I think it's the most crucial gap to solve. And the second one is improving the preparedness and the professional level of civil security areas in any kind of organizations. Development of improvement of awareness should be carried out in all sectors of population, workplaces, media, social networks, public spaces, and so on. You have to understand that in order to protect public safety, it will be necessary to suspend, under certain circumstances, certain civil rights for limited period and places. It is inevitable. Terrorism is not only about casualties, but primarily about public atmosphere. I believe that a series of suicide attacks in public spaces will paralyze the entire nation faster and for long than a single attack on national infrastructure, which I do not suggest to neglect the security of national infrastructure, but I think we have to emphasize and not to neglect the security of public spaces. I believe that the choice is ours. We can give in or stand tall and fight. I believe it is time for action. Short and easy, it's not going to be. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that insight on, especially people trying to define what the public areas are. And people look at public areas, and I think a lot of times when people are in public, they think it's the police's job to protect them. They don't really take responsibility for their own protection. And that's rather, as you said, it's actually a misnomer, I guess, because it's not the police's job actually to protect you. They do protect you, but they're there if something is happening, they're there to respond to what happens, but they can't be everywhere at once. How do you get people to take responsibility for their own security in public places? Was it just all the incidents had to happen and then people started taking responsibility for their own? Or did your government and the civilian populace or private sector help build that awareness?
Well, at first I think that reality will make it work, okay? But we don't have the reality to make it work. I think that all the security agencies and the government should engage, as I mentioned before, in a full program of indoctrination. I have no other word to do it. You have to educate the population from early elementary school to high school, colleges, universities, workplaces, employees, everywhere. We have to indoctrinate the public that they have the responsibility as well. Like you said, police and other security agencies cannot cover every inch on the ground. They cannot be present everywhere at the same time. And the police, the public is the eyes and ears of the security agencies. And they must be engaged in this subject. So,
when you started really engaging the public and taking responsibility for their own security, as you mentioned, the great example is the Boston Marathon bombing. And you're 100% right. When people in the U.S. generally see a bag somewhere, everybody thinks, well, somebody else will call it in, or I don't need to be worried about that because nothing ever happens here. But if everybody starts calling something in, how do you keep the police and the first responders from getting desensitized to all the false alarms?
Well, in Israel, what I know is Israel police urges the public to call on no matter what incident it is. The slogan is, when in doubt, there is no doubt. There is no doubt. Call us anyway. There is no such thing as nothing. We will be there anyway. Even if eventually we found out that it was nothing. So what? Call us anyhow. I believe that the police should be aware that there will be many calls, false calls, would you say. But it's better to come to every call and miss one true one. Okay? So I think the police should address it and should be prepared to be engaged in any call, even if eventually it will be a false one. They can write to 100 false calls, but 101 will be the true one. Okay? So I think it's the police problem and they have to solve it.
Now, you mentioned you believe it would be a good policy for more people to actually carry weapons. And that's a controversial, I guess, issue in the United States right now, because every time there's an incident, the very next day, they're not talking about the incident, they're talking about the weapons that were used and how do we get the weapons out of the hands of these people, so they want more gun control. Despite how anybody feels about gun control, this is always going to be a hot topic, because you have cultures like England and Australia who actually do fairly well with crime, and they may have reduced the number of murders and things that they've had throughout their economy and throughout their cultures. But in the U.S., they're protected by the Second Amendment to keep weapons. And my personal view is I like to be able to have a choice. If I want to carry a weapon, as long as I'm qualified with that weapon and it's a registered weapon, I should be able to carry it. Not having a choice leaves me with, there are other things I can still carry. You can carry knives, you can carry other things to protect yourself. But that's always going to be a hot topic for a lot of people. Now, in Israel, is it legal to carry weapons if you're registered and trained with that weapon?
Okay, I think, I don't know for a fact, but I think the United States is the only nation which the carry of arms and weapons is a constitutional right. In other countries, at least in Israel, it is not. You need to have the permit from the government to carry a gun, a weapon, and the permission is under certain conditions that you have to acquire to. Not every citizen is allowed automatically to buy a gun and have a permission. There are certain, qualifications you have to meet in order to be licensed to buy a gun and carry it. The dilemma is clear. Every weapon in the open space is a potential tool to commit an offense, a murder, or whatever. But hey, criminals do not need permission to carry guns. They have it illegally anyway. Of course, you have to make a good control about who received permission to carry guns, both psychologically and the skills of shooting, and you have to train yourself every year, a few months or whatever, and to prove ability. These matters should be preserved. But I think, at least from our experience, even in the last year, the presence of a legally armed citizen in terror incidents has been the tiebreaker between finishing the event with a lot of casualties or finishing the event with no casualties or few casualties. So I think this is the answer.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned suicide bombers are coming in, the devastating effect it has on the society and the communities. Now, in Israel, from 2001 to 2004, you had several suicide bombings every year, getting as high as, I think, 47 one year. And then in 2005, 2005, I believe the number actually was cut by half. By 2006, you were only experiencing a couple suicide bombings per year. That was a dramatic improvement in the awareness of the people or just the safety of the communities. How did you accomplish that? What steps did you take?
Well, I think in this subject, few major steps that the government had taken, and of course even the improvement of public awareness, contribute to this kind of result. But the major two steps that the government took was, first of all, a military operation, defensive shield, which the IDF operated in 2003, in April and May, which allowed Israel to break down all or almost all terrorist infrastructure in the Judea and Samaria territory, regain intelligence coverage, and deter the terrorist organization from acting more severely. This is one step. The second one was the completion of the barrier between the Israel state, the classical Israeli state, and the territories of the Palestinian Authority, which was completed majorly in 2006. Okay. This barrier made it difficult to terrorist suicide to enter from Judea and Samaria to Israeli territory. And of course, the public awareness was also a very major factor to reduce such type of incidents.
But it sounds like intelligence actually had a lot to do with it, to find out
Yes.
where they were coming from. And then you can actually say, okay, well, if you're going to do this to us, we're actually going to come back to your home and
Yes.
take action against you.
Intelligence and the barrier.
And the barrier.
It's very difficult to cross it.
And sometimes it's a little, with a country the size of the U.S., Russia, China, it'd be harder to build barriers like between cities and stuff. But the intelligence is a good thing to know of. As long as you know where they're coming from, hopefully you can. And you have countries that are doing really good with intelligence. Australia caught a few people who were planning on terror plots, and these were some kids. Obviously, the intelligence is working. The U.S. every now and then captures a cell before it's able to capture, or before it's able to act on its cells, on its terror plots. And Malaysia has actually done a really good job with their intelligence because they've caught over 200 people with links to ISIS. And some of them had plans to act against the government and Western establishments in Kuala Lumpur. So governments are doing a pretty good job, I believe, with intelligence. They don't catch everything, though, because then you end up with plots like you do in France. However, then a couple days later, hopefully, you had the information that came out so that they were okay, we're going to act in Belgium next, or we're going to act in the country next, so that they go on a high terror alert. And either, it doesn't matter if it's a false alarm or if somebody's just spreading false information, you let the people know so that they're more aware, and then nothing happens. And you end up not knowing if something would have happened, but having that information was key to the safety of the societies. So I agree with the intelligence being a big part of that. But yes, when you can put a barrier up and then have more control of the people that come through and the items they bring in, that's a big help.
But we have to bear in mind that intelligence is not 100% insurance certificate. There are gaps in intelligence. Therefore, we have to establish an inner circle of security preparedness, both professional innovation and the public awareness, because sometimes intelligence is missing. Okay? And either way, you have to be prepared. Okay? And but undoubtedly, intelligence is a key point in war on terror.
So, was a lot of technology utilized to help stop the attacks also?
No, I don't think it's a very significant or very high-tech technology. Cameras, alarms, fences, all kind of controlled access. Not something very high-tech.
Okay. One of the reasons I ask that is I've heard theories that one of the reasons that Israel is experiencing right now knife stabbings is because it's very low tech. Like it's harder to actually, it's easier to conceal the weapon. It's harder to find it. And I was wondering if you had some technologies that were actually assisting with trying to locate suicide bombers or what it might be.
Well, I think the terror that we are facing now in Israel is not yet organized. So we have a problem to cover it by intelligence, because the person wake up in the morning, and decide to take a knife, go out and start somebody. This is something that the intelligence will not be able to detect ever, I believe. And of course, if he means or go out and stab or shoot somebody in the street, there is no technology which can stop it. Only the cameras which will take a photo of him, and afterwards we will be able to identify him and arrest him. Okay, but if he tries to attack a certain facility which is secure, it will be much difficult for him. I believe now we are trying, the government and other security forces are trying to put some cameras and visual coverage that will allow us to try to detect the terrorist on his way to make his thing. How efficient it will be, time will tell.
Sure. So you have to try sometimes, right?
Yes, yes.
So one thing I was very curious about, now, when an act of terror occurs, if you have an active shooter situation that occurs at an organization, part of the recovery process in recovery planning is to make sure you have trauma counselors there and that you have people to help the employees that just experienced that trauma. But if it occurs in a public place, you're kind of on your own. You have to, if you're experiencing trauma, you have to go get your own psychologist or psychiatrist. But is there a place for people to go who experience things where they can get help?
Yes, I think in our experience, this kind of responsibility lies upon the municipality, the local authority. They have all the services, psychological and other kind of services, which helps civilians after the event had occurred. Starting from psychological treatment and support, going on with shelters and housing and a place to sleep if their house was collapsed or damaged or whatever, and even give them some money for starting their life again. This is at the level of the municipality. And if it's necessary, of course, the state intervenes as well. But there are systems in Israel which take care of it.
Right. So, how about the sharing of intelligence? We seem to have governments that do a pretty good job sharing intelligence these days, but the private sector needs to do a better job at sharing intelligence. I mean, it's one of the reasons why CR 360 was set up, was to help organizations share information during a crisis. But there's not a lot of platforms out there for organizations, or even communities for that matter, to share intelligence. Is that more widely recognized in Israel, where communities will share intelligence, or does it all come down from the government?
Well, intelligence usually comes from the government, intelligence, professional intelligence. And that's why what I said before about the Israeli model of managing civil security in Israel. Many organizations, by law, are regulated by security forces, especially the police, by laws. And that includes distributing intelligence information if there is any. Now, the problem really exists in the private sector, although some private sectors are regulated by the police as well, by law. And I don't know if it's talking about in the States or in Australia or something like that, if there is such a model as well. If not, I suggest to adopt it because it's very efficient. No intelligence agency, at least not an official one, will share its intelligence just like that with any private sector. We have to get a mediator between them, a formal mediator, like the police force or something, and he had to be acknowledged by the intelligence agency as entitled to get intelligence. Otherwise, I think only get together, head of our private sector, sit down and prepare for themselves private channels of distributing intelligence. Otherwise, they will not get it.
So, Shmulik, I have one more question for you, and then after in answering that question, if you have any closing remarks, please provide those for us. Um,
Yes.
and this is, I think this is, I want to make sure I word this properly so it comes out correct here. The media in the United States, especially, plays a big role in, as far as I'm concerned, in actually um, creating fear. They when something occurs, they sensationalize it. They make it bigger sometimes than it actually is. And of course, they need to sell advertising, so they need to get people to watch their shows. So they do whatever they can to draw the crowds. But it's not good for the people. So if you had, and I realize in some of our cities you do have a lot of stabbings, but if you had media attention to it every day, they would scare people into even wanting to go to the grocery store or anything like that. In Israel, is the media control different so that they don't incite more fear and more? And I don't know how the papers handle also ensuring you can't have that many attacks and not have some discrimination also, but you can't have the media feeding that discrimination. And I don't think the media does a good job of not feeding stuff like discrimination and calling things out that they don't de-escalate the situation. They escalate is what I'm really trying to say. How do you control that in Israel?
Well, regretfully in Israel, I think there was a big problem in it because I think the Israeli media incite, not intentionally, but incite the atmosphere. Because the media coverage of any incident, stabbing, shooting, or whatever, is very detailed, including footage, very explicit footages from the scene of action, with the blood, with the injured, unnecessary for my idea. And they take it for a long time. They discuss it and bring up so-called professional people, I don't know.
Yeah.
And they talk about it and then over and over and over again. And in that point, I really have to pay some compliments to the strange media, like in the Europe and even in the States. What I have learned is that the media in the States and in Europe does not show such explicit footages from the event.
Yeah.
And I think it had to come down. In Israel, regretfully, this is my criticism against it, they are exaggerating. And of course, it makes the atmosphere for the film worse and fear and unstable. And Israel is not a good example for it. Regretfully.
Okay. So it's really not better. Okay.
Yes.
Well, Shmulik, do you have any closing remarks? Anything you'd like to add to the audience that might be listening about how to make sure they stay secure in public places?
Well, as I said, I think we have to join hands together, public and government and any other agencies, and work together. The public has to realize that reality is changing. Terror is everywhere. And it's not going to leave us, not in the near time. We have to fight.
Okay. Shmulik, I want to thank you very much for your time and your expertise in this situation. I know in Israel you have extensive experience working in securing public places, and we really appreciate you taking time from your day to help us understand the problem better and give us some steps in which we can use to help secure our public places. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.